Greetings, demons, and welcome to my review of the Stadia Premier Edition. Now, I'm not going to be going over in too much detail anything other than the controller and the actual service itself, but I'm going to go over everything that's contained in the box. The box is a little bit too big to actually unbox properly in my setup, so I will be just going through them level by level. I will go through them in the order that they appear though, don't worry. So, first up is the actual controller itself. Now, I will say my initial impressions were pretty poor of this, especially by the fact it has the symmetrical design that the PlayStation has and the Wii U had, which I've never been a fan of this design personally. I think it's fine in the long run, but it's not something that I'd prefer. I much prefer the asymmetry that has been shown on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller as well as the Xbox One controller and also Series controller. A lot of controllers use it, mostly Microsoft ones. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's not terrible, and if you're a fan of PlayStation, you'll probably really like this design. I just personally don't, though I don't know, the DualShock's fine. This is also fine, I'm not huge on it. As for the actual button quality, I will say the face buttons themselves, as well as all the input buttons, including the power on button, are all perfectly reasonable. I wouldn't expect too much from this. Is presumably a mass-produced product, though how many people actually use it, I don't know. But generally, yeah, it feels alright. It's a decent enough quality. The buttons are responsive. They pop out, they're a little bit mushy, I would say, but not too much. Generally, they're fine. The D-pad, on the other hand, is a different story. Now, this just feels like 4 different button inputs, which may sound fine for most people, but that basically means if you're trying to do something like that, or even just regular diagonals, you have that ever so slight delay. There's no proper diagonal, which is unfortunate. And most D-pads are actually built to have all directions. They're supposed to be a full directional pad. That's why things like the Xbox Elite controller have the circle pad, and I believe also the Series controllers have that, I believe. I'm not completely sure, actually. But yeah, you're supposed to have that direction, each corner, and you just don't get that with this. It's just 2 inputs at once, which it's not great if you're playing something like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, anything to that like standard. But I don't know. It's definitely not very good either if you're wanting to play something like a platformer, because if you're wanting to play a platformer and you're used to using a D-pad for it, which I am, it doesn't really work too well. I will say it is fine for menus. If you're playing something like Destiny, which is on the service, yeah, it's fine. Just going through menus and stuff. Like, the things that you use it in, like, first-person shooters, generally, you will not have an issue with that because they only have the 4 directions to begin with. It's not too much of an issue, but as I say, fighting games and platformers, not very good with this. I'll just have to say that. Going over to the triggers, once again, the bumpers are fine. They're the same as the front buttons, pretty much. A bit clicky, I don't know. They're fine, though. But the triggers, I have a serious issue with, because these are not tactile. They have the movement of tactile, but they are not. These are just one input. That is the full input. There is no, like, say you were playing Forza or Gran Turismo or something like that, a racing game of some description, F1. You can't accelerate slowly with that, or you can't brake slowly with that or anything. That's just one input. So there's a catch-all of just once you've pulled it a certain distance, it's full throttle, which may seem like a non-issue, but this is the exact reason why I don't like the DualShock 4, because it does this as well. It has the weird movement of the stick. I'll grab a DualShock just to show you, just to compare, if I can find one. Do I actually have a DualShock? I may not have a DualShock at hand. That's weird, because I have a PlayStation here. I don't actually know where the DualShock is, that's weird. Oh, there it is. But yeah, the DualShock has a similar thing with its trigger, where it moves, but that is not a varied input, that is just one input. And unfortunately, they have repeated that with the Stadia controller. Obviously, it's Google this time rather than Sony, but same difference, really. Yeah, I don't know. It's not as good, especially if you're wanting to play a racing game like F1 or Dirt. It's just not very good. As for inputs, there's an aux cable at the bottom, which is fine. I'd rather have it than not have it, but it is whatever. It's not all too useful for what this is for, which is mostly for just plugging into well, not plugging into, but connecting to your phone or connecting to your browser. Generally you're going to have speakers or you're going to have an alternate way to actually get audio. So, I don't know, it's nice to have. I'd rather have it than not, but it's kind of pointless. And for charging, it is USB Type C, which is the mainstay of most Google products nowadays. So, generally, aesthetics wise, control looks fine. This is obviously the standard black and white version with the orange colours under the sticks, which I don't really get that design choice, but this is also the colour scheme of the Pixel 3, which is a phone that I actually love. It's what I've been currently using. It's actually what I'm recording on right now because, screw setting up an actual camera and mic, But, yeah, generally, it's fine. I don't love it, but it is what it is. I have used it a decent amount. It's fine. The D-pad's the only thing that really bothers me. The triggers are annoying, but I don't play enough racing games for it to matter. So, yeah, overall, it's fine. And just for comparison's sake, here it is next to a Xbox One controller. Here it is against a PS4 controller, or DualShock 4, whatever you want to call it. Here it is against a Joy-Con. And here it is against a third-party, I guess, Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I don't really know. So, moving swiftly on, it's the charger, which it's a pretty standard Google charger. The only difference between this and what you get with, say, the Pixel phone is just that rather than being USB Type-C, it is USB Type-A, which obviously the cable is USB Type-A to USB Type-C. It's fine. It works just as well as any other Google charger. So if you have a Google phone or anything like that, you understand how good these are. They are pretty decent chargers. They work really quickly. They support fast charging and all that. So generally, it's fine. I haven't really had to charge the controller too much. Surprisingly, it does have a decent battery. But whenever I have, it's worked pretty well. The cable works really well for syncing as well. Generally, I mean, you can tell I've got the wrap on it still. I generally just use my Pixel charger for the controller if I need it charging. So, yeah, it's fine. Otherwise, in that little pack in the back, there is paperwork and various other manual stuff. Nothing of real interest. I have looked through it all. But yeah, that is what's next, I guess. And now the penultimate part of this review, and also the main reason to actually buy this, or rather, in my case, get this for free from Google because, we hustle. But yeah, the Chromecast. Now, this is, as of filming this, the previous gen. This isn't the current gen. This is last generation. It probably, won't be the last by any means, the current gen at least. And it is also, I do believe, the final generation to actually not have Google OS or Android OS, whatever you want to call it, or Android TV. They change the branding up every once in a while, and I don't really follow it that well. But yeah, it's a Chromecast. I've not used this one specifically just because where I am, I'm not able to actually connect Chromecast devices. Long story, it's not worth explaining, but I can't do it quite properly. But the Chromecast is a decent device. It's something that I use pretty regularly when I'm back with my parents. And yeah, generally it's a good way to make any TV smart. That's my opinion anyway. I will say about this model specifically, it is a shame it is still using micro USB to charge or to get power, whichever. Though I will admit the fact that it now has a power brick rather than having a USB cable probably is a step up, in my opinion. I have a very long braided USB cable just attached to mine back at home. So, having an actual power brick is a good choice. Also, if I just switch this over a little bit, you may be able to see there is actually an Ethernet jack on the plug, which does mean you can have something that isn't just Wi-Fi based, which is definitely a good choice. My Chromecast does disconnect pretty regularly because of where it is in the house. So, generally, it being where it is, I wouldn't be able to connect it with a Ethernet cable, but it does give me that choice if I have it available to me. If this goes in the living room, perfect. If this goes in my bedroom, not so perfect. But, swings and roundabouts, it'll work out eventually. And overall, it's just a good feature to have. It's better than having to buy an adapter of some description. So, generally, fine. The cable quality is good, the actual adapter is good, and yeah, the Chromecast is good. That's all I can really say about it. There's not really too much to it. So, as for the actual service itself, as you can see here, I'm playing some Doom 64, which is a decent game on this service, though obviously with it being such an old game by comparison to some of the things like Destiny that are on here, you know, it's not necessarily representative of how this service can be, but generally, from my experience, I've not actually had too bad of a time. I have got a decent internet connection, generally, so that could have something to do with it, but generally, like, I would never say this is a bad service just based off your connection. It's generally just a thing of, if your device runs it and you are at least close to your modem, which I fortunately am, generally you should be fine. I need to go up there. Sorry, I'm playing the game like live as I talk about this. But yeah, the service isn't, you know, phenomenal by any means. It's not perfect. But I would say that it's as close to as you pretty much can get for this sort of thing. I've not had many issues with it generally. And that's saying a lot. You know, I've had issues with things like xCloud, I've had issues with the PlayStation streaming service. So to say I haven't had many issues with this one, which is kind of known to be the worst one, is pretty interesting, I must admit. Generally, my experience has been mostly with Doom 64, Destiny, and a few platformers, which I can't remember the names of right now, but I've played a few different ones. And yeah, they've all been fine other than the aforementioned D-pad problem that I've had. But, you know, that is what it is. I'm not really too fussed about it. And yeah, generally, I think the service is fine. I would not really suggest paying for it. The Stadia free subscription is still perfectly fine. It just means you have to buy each game individually. But generally, if you're wanting something like this, you probably are wanting just buy the games. And in all fairness, with xCloud, you're basically just playing the games that you earn anyway. So, and that's probably the closest competitor to this, other than I can't remember what the PC one is, but that one's also pretty good. I think it's Nvidia that does that one. I don't remember. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope you enjoyed. Let's subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Lunar rainbow flag, happy pride, rabbit with facts. Streamer, let's play. They them out like dinosaurs. FNAFA, control. Not the leader of a cult. Rabbit with sax. It's Lunar.